To access the DranSCADA platform is you're basically authenticated with the username and password. Obviously, what that brings to the table is a level of security. So you can have things like you can have a user restricted to certain data groups and things of that nature. You know, for example, you might have an enterprise-wide system where you have a DranSCADA platform that's importing data from many different sites or regions. You know, each site or region has a username and password. So in other words, you do not want someone to log in and basically be able to view data from all the different sites. So you have the ability to kind of restrict users from different parts of the data. Here you see the, this is a rendering of our site of our Edison building in 1000 New Durham Road, Edison, New Jersey, Ross talked about. This is the one line that we basically converted into a dashboard, and this is a fairly good representation of our power distribution here. Again, you have the power input coming in from service-mounted transformer out on the street, going into the main switchboard, and then you have your various different, here's your electrical panels on the different floors, and then HVAC on the roof. And what we've done here, because it's a demonstration site, we have our various different DranX monitors, as you see here, connected on our main bus of what we use for demonstration. Now, obviously the dashboard or the single line can be whatever the user defined. You can have a main screen and then have sub-screens off of that, depending on the complexity of the system. It might be something that's pretty simple like we have here, in which we have a main screen. And then of course we have the meters displayed on the main screen. Now, there's a lot of information that you have here that's very easy to read. For example, do I have any PQ events if I have PQ monitors in my system? Again, we can collect data from any IED, intelligent electronic device, which is basically, it can be a meter. If it has a CPU, it falls into the category of an IED. So we can import data from the various different IEDs. We can import data from different data sources. You know, at the end result is that you have all the data coming from the different sources, basically converted to information that is easy to read. For example, do I have any PQ events? If I do, then obviously this would turn red, indicating that I had a PQ event. I also have these windows that are user defined as far as an event window. I can go to event window here. I can take a peek like a thumbnail and see the date and time in which something occurred. I can open the window for a bigger view, and then of course just scroll down for what we call event notification. So you have that. Now, event notification doesn't necessarily have to be power quality events. It can be a breaker opening or a breaker closing. It can be if you're pulling in weather data, for example, did the wind speed exceeds a certain parameter in which I want an event notification. So, and then of course I have windows for alarming. Now, alarming can be a scenario where a PQ monitor recorded an event turns red. I have a description of the alarm here, and again, I can open the windows and view the alarm data. Again, having the information right there in front of you and easy to access is a big advantage. You don't have to jump through a lot of menus and sub-menus to get to the information. As far as the meters themselves, you can see the various different meters. Obviously, any dashboard type display is going at the onset display what we call basic data or basic meter data. You can see here, this is our current average voltage. Here's our average amperage. And of course, here's what our active power is. Of course, I can always click on the meter itself and have another view of the meter. Again, which the graphical display is showing me my basic power readings. I can also have a full view of this meter, very detailed meter, by simply going to full here. and then it gives me the windows here, and this is the full detail from this particular meter. I have my windows for trend data or historical data. I can look back as far as the duration of these windows. I can always expand a window, for example, from the thumbnail. And then I have, these legends here that I can turn on and off. Gives me min and max values. So the way that I would interpret this as information is within the last 15 minutes, basically this is what my min and max values was for amperage. I can go to the down arrow here and select the different windows of data that I want to view that are predefined. I can also be more precise and put in a start date and time and an end date and time, and basically update the chart. You can see this updates at a defined interval. I can choose these various different intervals in which I would update the chart. So you can see this is basically almost like a running strip chart of our amperage for the last 15 minutes. Just by going back, I can go back to my main screen here. So here you have a combination of real-time data, you have historical data, and then I get into more advanced views for this particular meter. And again, this can be a DranSCADA meter, it can be someone else's IED device in which I'm pulling in this detailed data, such as harmonics and so forth. And so if I go right down the line here, okay. And then of course, going back, I can go back to my home page here. The other thing that Ross talked about that I thought that is the key and really the key to DranSCADA is it is not just, well, if you don't have DranSCADA meters, then you're not eligible to use DranSCADA. And here is a classic example of being able to integrate third party. Now, you've all probably familiar with the various different meters or IEDs that are out there, such as the Nexus meters, and of course, the PowerLogics from Snyder, and then Satec, and of course the Eaton meters, and of course Schweitzer. So being able to pull in this data as well is an advantage. You may have a system that might, in which there's no DranSCADA meters at all, but the user wants a very attractive information field platform to pull all that data into a single place, and they would be a classic DranSCADA customer. For example, if I go to one of these meters here, now right now they're sitting in a lab and we just have voltage only, but you'll see it follows the same path as far as providing basic information, and then of course providing detailed information. And again, these windows here are user defined. The one advantage that DranSCADA has is when the user makes changes, there's no coding. There's virtually no coding that's involved. Everything is in CSV files that you can easily edit these windows for different type of parameters. Right now we're reading power, but this could very well be temperature. It could be humidity. It could be airflow. It can be those things that is important to your facility. But here you see that basically it follows the same path here, but it's not a DranSCADA meter. It's someone else's meter. So that's the whole point of one advantage of DranSCADA. Go back home here. Another thing that Ross talked about that I thought was very important is how DranSCADA would, let's say, coexist with other software platforms. Namely, let's say PQView or PQView DE, where it can run side by side. So DranSCADA can also be thought of as an all-in-one HMI. So typically, if you're running, let's say, two different platforms side by side, well, if you see data in one platform that may relate to the other platform, what do you have to do? Well, you have to close that platform, maybe switch out of that platform and switch into the other platform to view the data. So you wind up having these multiple windows open, especially if it's a web app, you have multiple browser sessions and things of that nature, and that can get a little messy and puts a lot of resources on your server. Well, within DranSCADA, we do that by having what we call an embedded GUI, and there's two examples of an embedded GUI. One, as far as interfacing with another system, and again, that could be PQView, it can be PQView DE, which are the DranSCADA platforms, but it may be someone else's platform as well. And we do that with an embedded GUI. Here, for example, this is PQView, or it can be PQView DE. So the typical scenario where this might come into play is that I have some type of visual notification. Again, it can be visual, it can be audio, it can be email, but I have some type of notification. I have an alarm listed in the alarm panel, but maybe I want to, and that may be all that I need for that particular scenario. I can report to whoever's interested that at this date and time, we had an alarm in which we had a voltage reduction on phase A or something to that effect. But there may be some times where you may want to view the waveform data. And if you're running it with side by side with PQView, then from your dashboard or your single line or however you have your screen laid out, I can simply just go here to PQView, and within DranSCADA, I have my access to PQView. And of course, I can just simply type in the username and password that I would use to get into PQView, or in this case, PQView DE. And give it a second or two. And now I'm in my DE platform in this case, or it can be, any other platform that is running side by side. And you can see here, if I go down the list here, you can see the event itself. And then of course, just to exit out, all I have to do is just exit out of the window, and then I'm back to my main screen. So that's the power of having what we call an all-in-one HMI. We can also do it from the meter level as well. Meters that they're introducing now, or IEDs that they're introducing now, have these very comprehensive web interfaces. Well, that can be incorporated into DranSCADA as well. Again, falling in the category of what we call an embedded GUI. And here would be an example. These meters here, Ross talked about the general purpose PQ meters and our energy meters. If, for example, if I go to our PQ3K, which is one of the popular general purpose power meters from DranSCADA, and here I have the basic view, okay, basic meter readings. But let's say, for example, I wanted to make a change in the meter. I want to change the time. I want to change a ratio of things of that nature, okay? Rather than Xing out of DranSCADA and then going and opening a separate web browser to access the meter, I can simply just do it right from here, the embedded GUI, and then I have access direct to the meter. So now I can do the various different things within the meter itself. So that's the beauty of being able to have what I will call an all-in-one HMI. The other, another example of being able to import data or integrate data from third-party devices, third-party meters, third-party IEDs, etc., is in our setup here, we're basically, if you were to step back and say, what are we monitoring? Well, we're monitoring the mains. We just happen to have multiple instruments on the mains, but we're monitoring the mains. And typically, in the real world, the user would basically have maybe 1 or 2 meters on the main. Well, essentially, you'll have a meter on each feed coming in. But in our demo, we have all the meters on a single one. But what we're doing here is we have power data, so we're monitoring the trend or our active power. We're monitoring the PQ. And we even as granular as getting down to the individual electrical panels themselves. Here's an example of where we have a branch circuit monitor from a third party that is connected to one of our electrical panels. And again, we can access this data just by simply clicking on the electrical panel, and then we have a view of this panel. So we see the panel has a name, and this is the current loading on this particular panel. Now, there's some information, there's several pieces of information that we have here. Number one, we see what the total loading of the panel is. Number two, we see the individual branch circuits and what their values are. Number three, we actually have alarms set up for these various different limits here and color coded. So what that gives us is that if any one of these circuits, let's say, exceed 80% of capacity, system sends out an alarm. So that alarm populates our dashboard. The alarm can be sent out as an email notification. The alarm can be an audio alarm. So now we're monitoring right down at the branch circuit level. Now, we talked about another option as far as reporting. What type of reporting is DranSCADA capable of? You know, maybe you're involved in an energy management application where you need the reporting as far as usage. And of course, DranSCADA supports that as well. And this demo is set up for that. If I have a scenario where I have a main screen and then I have sub screens after that, I can get to those screens by even having hot links on my main display, or I can simply just go to the appropriate menu, open the appropriate folder that has all my different templates, if you will, or subscreens, and be able to access data. One of the popular ones that we have for energy usage is our energy report. So if I open the energy report and I'm going to select a particular monitoring point, let's uncheck this one, and we're just viewing 1 meter here. Okay, and then I'll just go over and refresh this. Now this gives me a lot of information as far as where the energy is going. Okay, so this is the total energy and where the energy flows is. We use what is called a Sankey diagram. A Sankey diagram allows us to determine, if you're in energy management, you want to know who's using what, how much, where is it going, and this is an excellent tool to allow the user to see that. That's basically taking data from the meters themselves and converting it to information that is easy to understand. And then, of course, you have your trend data, and this is typical of our facility. You can clearly see the days of the week in which there's production, and then, of course, the weekend. Another thing that's very popular in energy reporting is the aggregation of multiple meters. So you might have a building that might have several meters at key locations, in which I can simply just go to 1 meter and view the details of 1 meter. But if I want to aggregate all the meters to get a total of what's going on in the building, then I have what is called a site summary, in which I can easily define. Another useful tool is, and this is one of my favorite tools in this particular report, is a heat map. And so the heat map basically tells you where it begins to turn from yellow to red, where you're using the most energy. And it's clear to see here when production starts and when production ends. You can see here's the hours of the day. So this is like 6 a.m. Monday to Wednesday. We're looking back the last 7 days. Again, we can easily look back further if we want to, but so you can see here where and again, these windows here are thumbnails, if you will. I can expand this by going to view, so you can expand this. So now you have a more detailed look to where you can see roughly when production starts. You can clearly see where most of the energy is used during the mid part of the day and when production is over. And so this is a great view. The heat map is a great tool to use for determining that. And then, of course, you have these bar charts to determine usage for the time range that you selected, and annually and monthly and so forth. It even allows you to put in some cost information. And not only if I'm looking at this particular meter here, but I've also added my branch circuits in here. So if I wanted to see what the energy usage was on a particular branch circuit, I can just simply select the branch circuit and it'll display the resultant data. I can also generate PDF reports because I can walk up to a workstation, log on and display the report, but how do I get a hard copy that I can email to someone? And then you have these commands here that will allow you to generate a PDF report, and this would be an example of one here. And hopefully everyone can see that. But here's an example of a PDF. You don't see it? Okay, I only have one screen, so no, don't see it. All right, well, trust me, guys, it popped up on my screen. For some reason, it's not sharing on others, but this is how you can generate the reports PDF reports right from the energy reporting. And then, of course, if you have other subscreens, they can be in there various different folders. For example, you might have something more metering, let's say a data center floor. And this is just a rough example of how one will look. Okay, so this means that I can, basically add other screens for other locations and so forth. And they're all kept in these individual folders, if you will. Okay. And then, of course, I can always go back to my main screen. There's a couple different ways that I can do that, just simply by going to Dashboards, Home, and then that takes me back to my main screen. But yeah, those are the highlights. I think I've covered everything without getting too detailed. But I think, some of the takeaways from this is, number one, the first thing when I saw this, when this was introduced to us, the first things that was striking to me was the visualization. The crispness of the displays, professional looking, falls right in line with other software platforms, SCADA platforms that I often see in my travels. And it's a great tool, and again, it's not just relegated to DranSCADA instruments. It's not just relegated to power monitoring. It basically takes data that is produced by a IED or another data source and converts it to information in one common place.